Hello and welcome to episode 6 of Rugby World Cup Weekly, our flagship weekly Rugby World Cup show, as we shift attention from recapping to previews. With the quarterfinals just a few sleeps away, the going is getting tough and the excitement is absolutely palpable for it. Joining me tonight are a trio of guests who all believe they have another few weeks in France to come. Firstly, we welcome back our sole Irish representative tonight in the form of Pádraig Kelly. So welcome on, Pádraig.
Thanks, Cam, for having me back on again. It's great to be here. Great to be talking about a quarter final.
Yeah, you're the first Irish person to say that, really. We there is always that dread, but it is good to be talking about it with more excitement and optimism. And joining him is our English representative of the night and Sale fan turned writer, Ben Nurse. So welcome back, Ben.
Hi, thanks for having me. Proud and surprised to be representing England in a quarterfinal podcast.
Yeah, there's been a bit of that, to be fair, especially coming into the tournament. But we're all here now, by hook or by crook. And joining them finally is Rap Pod co-host and Cardiff fan, the one and only Harley Worthy. So welcome to the podcast, Harley.
Good evening. Great to be on here. Long time listener. Been hoping to get my debut here.
We like to hand out debut caps, but I think we might be the first since Stephen Donald to give one in the knockout stages. I'm not really sure, but here we go. Anyways, we're going to start with Wales against Argentina, as that's the first game of the weekend. And we'll just move through as the schedule goes. So it's to Marseille first. This was always kind of a possible quarterfinal matchup, guys, because Argentina could have come top, Wales could have come second, or as the other way around it ended up being. But very few saw it unfolding just how it has, I suppose. Harley, as our not token, but as our Welsh representative, how are you feeling heading into this quarterfinal?
Pretty good. I mean, Wales. I remember about 12 months ago, I was predicting Wales to finish fourth and have to go through qualifying the way we were going into Pivac. So having Gatland back just made it a bit better, and just seeing us play, and it reminds me of back like 2019 in our peak when, all right, it wasn't the rugby everyone wanted to watch. Well, apart from me, because it's the sort of high tactical stuff and pure effort I love. But
you're on the right podcast for that anyway, that's for sure.
But yeah, I feel pretty confident. I know Argentina aren't a pushover side, but they're a team we tend to beat more often than we don't. And I think this Gatland side, that's the steel's back. So I feel like anything Argentina try and throw at us, they've got the calm, cool heads to push through.
No, and it is one of those matchups in that regard, as you said, that Wales do seem to have the edge in this one, but World Cups, they haven't played in a lot of World Cup matchups either, and it's a whole new kettle of fish. But Ben, I just want to get your take on Warren Gatland as a kind of neutral observer, because the job he's done has been incredible, and we're actually at the point now where even if Wales lose, you could make a case that's even been a successful World Cup, coming top of their group so dominantly as they have. So what do you make of Wales' World Cup so far, and has it been a success so far?
I think definitely. I think if you told Welsh fans before the tournament you'd win 4 from 4 in the group and get to the quarterfinal, they'd bite your hand off in a second. But then at the same time, the way it's played out, the way they've been playing, and the way Argentina have played, which is not amazing, that they'll still be disappointed if they lose this game, which is incredible to say that Wales fans will be disappointed to not make the semi-final, especially saying that before the tournament. What Gatland's done is remarkable because he's taken a team that was perennial fifth place finish in the Six Nations and then taken them straight back to the team that he had playing the best rugby in Welsh rugby history a few years ago in just a few months turnaround. So I think yes and no for is it a successful World Cup? I think they'll hope to win this game, but at the same time, even being in the quarterfinal right now is remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. And I suppose some people thought they'd go out in the group. Some people did think they'd go this far. I was one of those. I just felt like it was there for them. It would have been proper Gatland tactical masterclass they were to do it, and they have. But they are up against a stiff Argentinian opposition, even if some people, and I listened to Bernard Jackman on the Roar podcast, he was kind of downplaying Argentina's performance against Japan as it was extremely fast and loose. So, Pádraig, to bring you into this one, it's really been a case of Argentina not fully being the side that we expected them to be. Possibly a lack of cohesion, a lot of changes, a lot of chopping and change in particular. So are you buying into their chances after one big win, or would you still be skeptical as granted as a neutral, but helping out our USC friends?
I don't know. I think Argentina have been quite an enigma across this World Cup. They flattered to beat England early on, but if they didn't have like soap on their hands for 80 minutes, like that game could have been completely different. And I think that's where if they can get that attack flowing, they will put Wales under pressure. Like Carreras and Buffelli I've started to kind of hit their straps in that sense of like Buffelli's just finding gaps and just being in the right place at the right time again. That's something from a winger, especially knockout rugby, that could be just really, really essential. For them, I think Matera is going to be a huge loss, like Faletau will be for Wales. I think that's how this game now is opened up with those two players missing. The two key players in the back row for both teams now going means the back row is going to more so than usual signify the outcome of this game. And if Jack Morgan keeps up his form, I think he could be have the major influence on this game. But depends if Argentina can keep it out of it being kind of grudge or ruck warfare, I'd edge it more them. But if this game slows down at all, I think you'd have to favor Wales. I'd like 55-45 for me, Wales, if I was putting money on it or anything like that. That's where how I'm edging at the moment.
I momentarily zoned out and thought you were calling for a 55-45 classic. And I was thinking, fair enough. But like, we all have another game to get to after that. Like, calm down a small bit, man. But no, I can definitely see that. And Harley, I might just come back to you on the Welsh team who was named. I didn't have in the run order, but just because didn't know when we'd be getting team sheets as we record on Thursday night. Jack Morgan moves to 6 with Tommy Reffel at 7 and Aaron Rainwright at 8 to accommodate Faletau missing out in particular. Dan Bigger is back at 10. There's a start for Ryan Elias at hooker alongside Gareth Thomas and Thomas Francis. It's probably not the most high profile Welsh team, but when you look at the pieces that are there, you can see why they've won 4 from 4. They beat England in the warm-ups because that's exactly the team that you would want to just go out there and execute the game plan that we spoke about beforehand, where they're going to make a lot of tackles. They're going to be defensively sound.
Yeah, and I think as well with having Bigger back, that kicking game and having 2 sevens. So if you look at when Wales have been getting turnovers on the floor, it's not been the typical you get a nice chop tackling and straight over the ball. It's more from our wingers chasing hard and tackling whoever's receiving the kick, and then particularly against Georgia, Tommy Reffel getting straight over the ball, and that's given us not only the advanced field position from the kick, but then we've got the penalty, and whether we're kicking 3 or we're going to the corner, it's a lot of pressure that. So I think I think you're right about it being about the back row, and is there Facundo Issa going to improve his team or be more of a detriment than Tommy Reffel is? And then you've got Chris Shunza coming on the bench, which again shifts the back row balance completely there. Elias coming in, I think, makes sense. He's been our best hooker of the 3. I know Derry Lake's co-captain and stuff, and he's gone to the bench, but Gatland's proven that he will drop a captain if they're not. He did it with Matthew Rees in 2011. And there's injuries. He'd rather have the 15 players that can execute that game plan than a captain or a symbol. And I think that's the thing that's typified with this 15 and actually the wider 23. They're all hard workers, and that's what Gatland puts all his stock in. Everything about a Gatland team is about working hard and being fitter and getting there. One of the things about the ball being slow, the 4 slowest average ruck balls in any game have all come from Wales's opponents during the pool stage. So I think Squid Rugby did release a video last night, and Argentina, Portugal, and Georgia and Fiji for that matter, were all 1 second slower than the ruck average. So I think that's been done more through tackle choice and trying to slow it before we hit the deck, because they know we haven't got the players to absolutely smash people backwards. So Gatland's, when the Mike Forshaw, he's made it a lot cuter and actually tried to slow the ball down before the ref would necessarily get involved normally.
Yeah, and that's probably going to be key, because we've seen what Mateo Carreras in particular did off that quick ruck ball against Japan. Like, he was, every time he touched the ball, he looked like he'd score. Like, it's very rare a hat-trick hero doesn't get the best try in the game, or, says that. But that Argentina attack was frightening at times. And Ben, I might just come to you for Argentina for a minute, if you don't mind, because they were in England's pool. They have some high-profile players. You look at Montoya, you look at Kramer, Isak, Kubeli, the Carrerases, Chocobares, and Juan Cruz Mali at fullback, and Milian Buffelli on the wing as well, I should say. But they are without Paulo Matera. He's out. A huge loss for them. Do you think they still have what it takes to win this game, to get to a semi-final, even without their inspirational leader of Matera?
I think what we've all alluded to, and we all know as a fact, is that what Argentina do better than anyone else, their calling card for years, even before Checa took over, is they can look like they have nothing much for 3, 4 games. And then suddenly, because of the personnel they have and the structure they have, they could suddenly put in a performance which is on par with the top 3, 4 teams in the world. So it's a cliche, but you can never write off Argentina because of the players you mentioned. Boffelli can win games, Montoya can win games. A lot of players in that team can win games, and I think even on paper, even the way the teams are performing, Argentina's team is better on paper than Wales. So I think if I had to choose, I'd pick Wales, but you can never write off Argentina, especially with the team they've got at the moment.
Absolutely. And Park, we'll get into predictions now. It's all of these games are a coin flip in their own regard, but which way do you see quarterfinal number 1 going?
I can see Wales winning it because of the old adage, hard work wins when talent doesn't work. I think that's very much what that Wales team's about. And if Argentina doesn't click, that work rate, that just constant go, 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 go that Wales do, will get them over the line.
Ben, I'll come to you before we go to our Welshman in the panel. Which way do you see it going?
I think Wales by 3 points.
Tight one. And Harley, is it going to be? I'm going to say Wales. So, are we going to go 4 for 4, or are you going to be the pessimistic one of the bunch?
Absolutely no. I think Wales are going to win probably by about 5 or 6. I think it will depend how quickly Wales can start. So we've started quite fast and then just allowed teams to go back to us. So I think if Wales can do a similar thing to what England did to Argentina and basically just get that scoreboard rolling really early on, I could see it being a bit messier. But I mean, you can't write Argentina off, particularly if they're emotionally up for the game. The question is did they expend that one game playing against Japan?
Yeah, and it's been a theme of past World Cups. Sometimes teams have that big performance and they have a massive come down afterwards. We're all saying Wales, but I feel like we're not all going to have the same winner of the next quarterfinal. It's Ireland against New Zealand, Saturday Night Lights in Paris, or to quote our former friend, our former guest on the pod, friend of the pod, Harry Jones, Stade de Zombie, as we might as well call it now, because the Irish have taken over Paris. World number 1 against 3-time champions, a team who's never won a quarterfinal against a team who's only lost 1 quarterfinal. It's a new rivalry. All these talking points, Park, for 80 minutes of rugby. And I should throw it in here. You were bold in your pre-tournament predictions. You felt like Ireland can win the World Cup, never mind just this game. So surely, no more than the rest of us, your nerves are starting to kick in now as well.
You'd be foolish not to be nervous. Like, nerves are like, you're at a quarterfinal. This is one-off game. Anything can happen. But I still think Ireland have the tools to beat this New Zealand team. I think one of the big things for Ireland is being able to field back-to-back 23s from last week's game. I think that's going to really help with the cohesion. I think at this stage you have 3 games left. You're playing if you're fit. There is no tomorrow, and I think we're seeing that in the Irish selection. I think our defense has been very, very good all tournament. If we go, just look back to that Scotland, that 10 minutes after we scored our try, keeping Scotland out 3 or 4 times in a row.
The 18 phase set in particular was just phenomenal.
Exactly. And you look at those things, you're kind of going, all right, we're defending really well. And then you see how we're attacking, where we have constant options. We have so many strings to our bow. Looking at New Zealand, I think we're going to maul a lot more than we have. I think that's quite a bit of a weakness going into that game. But yeah, I'm nervous. New Zealand are an incredible team. They have that ability just to score from nothing. But I don't think we're a team that will give them those chances enough to let them come into the game. And I don't think Joe Schmidt's set piece moves will scare Ireland. As Johnny Sexton said, he's not the one on the pitch.
And it's ironic coming from Johnny when he was, the on-field coach in the Joe Schmidt era. But it's a fair point. New Zealand, outside of set piece, have looked a little bit bland at times. They've scored some wonderful individual tries, but in terms of going 4, 5, 6, 7 phases, they could not do it against France. They looked so rudderless at that stage. And Harley, still at the end of the day, this is the All Blacks. I know there's been a bit of bashing here in Ireland, a bit of joking around. Oh, it's only New Zealand. We can't even call them the All Blacks anymore. But it still feels like they're underdogs. And I'll ask you to put on your partial hat here, but how good are they really? Because that Pool A was a cakewalk.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. I think the big issue is just I don't want to be bashing them, but Italy really disappointed. Because they basically let one try in, they defended reasonably well, let one in. At one missed tackle, that's another try, and then you could just see the heads drop, and that was it. They just, they'd gone to the post match already. So I haven't seen the team looked very much like Joe Smith's Ireland, and when it looks good, it looks really fantastic, but it looks fragile. And I think if there's any team in World Rugby who'll be able to defend Joe Schmidt's attacking plans, it's a team coached by Joe Schmidt's former defence coach, who knows what most of his attacking plans were.
Yep.
Yeah, that's absolutely huge. Andy Farrell was defence coach for Ireland before he took the job, and it still feels like, as much as all the talk about, what can New Zealand do in attack, they're going to need an awful lot better of a forward performance as well from what we've seen last summer, because De Groot and Lomax have come in the last 12 months and have been fantastic, but they weren't there and their scrum was going backwards. Scotty Barrett wasn't at the same level. Whitelock was starting and was being outplayed. Their back row struggled for large periods in those 3 games. So there's a huge part of New Zealand needing to be at their best in the tight exchanges. Ben, they're definitely 2 of the most impressive teams. There's no doubt about that. So with that in mind, where do you see it being won loss? Do you think it'll be a forward battle? Do you think it'll be high scoring? How do you see it going?
I think, like a lot of big test matches recently, and like a lot of knockout rugby games, it will be defense. It will be when Ireland defend dominantly, they win games, and they win games well. And that's one of the signatures of this Andy Farrell team, is the defense. If they keep New Zealand to 1, maybe even 2 tries, then they'll win the game, because they'll score 2 tries against this New Zealand defense. I just think, I was thinking about it today, and I think it's just sad that we're going to lose one of these teams from this tournament, because they've given so much to this tournament. I want to see both teams in the semi-final. And I also think that if it wasn't for the quarterfinal curse, the fabled quarterfinal curse, I think pretty much everyone who watches rugby and who's watched this World Cup would have Ireland banked as their favourite to win the final. It's just this stage they need to get past, and then once they've got through this quarterfinal, which I think they will, then I don't know who can stop them.
Well, there's a reason why a lot of the column inches here for the last couple of months have been it's quarterfinal or final for Ireland, because realistically, if they do get past the quarterfinal, bar 2015, plethora of injuries, like they should be getting to a final. They are a better team than anyone on the other side of the draw. Pádraig, just because we have the team sheets to us as we record, you mentioned Ireland, largely the same 23, just Joe McCarthy in the number 19 shirt for James Ryan, who's injured, and Jimmy O'Brien comes into the bench. Now, considering Mac Hansen only trained for the first time yesterday, and we're not even 100% sure if he fully trained, that feels like a decision there. But having the likes of McCarthy, Jack Conan is kind of just back on the playing scene, and Jimmy O'Brien coming into the squad makes you realise that's a pretty good Irish 23 as a unit.
Yeah, I think that's been the big difference this World Cup compared to other years. We actually have a better 23 than we've had coming into tournament, full stop. So any time we've, like, even 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 12 years ago, I don't think you could name a better 23. Maybe starting 15 have been better, possibly, individual players. But I think as a 23, depth-wise, we can kind of go into a 27, 30 player squad that could genuinely come in, and they're not just doing a job. You're not kind of going, who's that? You're kind of, there's a squad there that's ready to play and ready to have impact. I think a big thing about the couple of games is our bench is coming on and not just doing a job. They're coming in and having an impact on the game. Kelleher is an incredible replacement for Sheehan, but even if Kelleher wasn't there, Herring brings something when he comes on the pitch. Kilcoyne, Finley, they're doing huge shifts in defence when they're coming on, and that's from your sub props.
I should probably add in there, you mean Finley Beelum and not Finlay Christie, because there's going to be two for one of the first times probably ever.
Very true, Finlay Beelum. No, our Finlay, like Joe, I'm looking forward to see what Joe McCarthy brings. I think if he comes on with 10 minutes left in the game, that raw physicality he brings will genuinely have a huge impact, especially at the breakdown, if his decision making is as good as it has been this tournament. But yeah, it's more the bench that I'm more impressed by of what they can bring more than our starting 15, because we know what our starting 15 can do. We know what Van der Fleer, Caelan Doris, and Gibson Park are going to bring. Like O'Mahony in the line out is going to be huge. I think we're going to, especially as New Zealand need that to launch from, and they need their scrum to launch from. I think having Porter and Furlong have some of their best games that they need to have. Look, I think Ireland can win this, but we have to have an 80-minute performance. This can't be, we can't drift in and out of a game. It's got to be the game of our tournament this far. We have to play better than we did against South Africa to have a chance and to make sure we can win this game.
I agree 100%. And Harley, it's a New Zealand squad who, okay, maybe compared to 2019, they're not the team on paper that they were, but still, as you mentioned, Ethan de Groot has come in, Tyrell Lomax has come into the squad and made them better. Shannon Frizzell is another. Mark Talea does miss out due to injury, but he was a player who had made them a better team in that backline. What do you make of the New Zealand 23 that's been picked?
I mean, there's quite a few interesting decisions. Obviously, Ethan de Groot comes back in from his ban. So first thing is, how fit is he going to be? Because he basically got a red card first game, second game, and then just hasn't played for 4 weeks. So is he going to be ready and up for it? Because I think that's going to be important, particularly going up against Furlong, who may not be the Tadhg Furlong of 2019, but he's still one of the best tight ends in the world. I'm sure some South African listeners will correct me and tell me there's at least 20 better ones there playing in the Currie Cup. I think Mark Talea actually has missed out due to a breach of team rules. Apparently, it broke curfew.
Actually, I probably should have said that. You're right.
Yeah, didn't move those bags well enough.
I thought it was sweeping the sheds, but okay.
Yeah, he only swept the home sheds, not the away. So he got done. I mean, you still got, for me, possibly the best scrum half in the world, Aaron Smith. I know that's controversial with Dupont being on field, but I'm long of the opinion Antoine Dupont is the best player in the world. But for everything you want a scrum half to do, Aaron Smith is your man. Yeah, no, I quite like Dalton Power-Plea. I think he's probably playing better than Sam Cane. If Sam Cane wasn't the captain, I don't think he'd be in there. Was it Peter Amani in the tour down there who said he's just a shit Richie McCaw?
Yeah,
And
and I'd say he'll
actually,
double down.
it's an interesting squad. Whitelock coming on off the bench, so I think him and Joe McCarthy, that's going to be quite a tasty matchup when they're both on. But both quite physical locks. D-Mac on the bench. I mean, there's a lot of calls to have him starting and actually dropping Bowden Barrett, which was unthinkable 12 months ago. I mean, he's been impressive this tournament so far. But then again, you've got to judge the opposition he was playing against. So yeah, it's an interesting squad. It's definitely not the best. I'm still not convinced Rico Ioane is a defensively sound 13. So I think Ringrose and Aki are going to have a lot of fun with that.
Yeah, well, we hope so.
It's an interesting squad. But we'll go on to predictions later. But I think Ireland will do it.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned McKenzie because I hold the belief that Damien McKenzie is a world-class fullback, he's a world-class attacker, but if Ireland are up by 7, 8, 9 points and he's coming on and he goes into 10, I'd probably be more confident. Do you know, we've seen him in the Super Rugby final trying to chase things, and that's what he's great to do because he's got that attacking spark, but Ireland aren't, the Waratahs. They're not Namibia. Like, they're one of the best packs at smothering you, one of the best defenses, as Ben and Pádraig have touched on. Like, that is a very different type of pressure. Be interested to see how he goes. I think someone like Leonard Brown, like Papa Leahy, they're probably safer choices on the bench. So, aside from maybe McKenzie, even Christie over Roygard, you're probably looking at getting in front and trying to see it out with this squad because we know that Ireland and what they are bringing off the bench can win a game. We've seen Conor Murray do it. We've seen, the likes of Kelleher and Bealham and Conan. We've seen these guys be game changers. So that is absolutely crucial. Ben, I'll start the predictions off with yourself. You haven't been asked to vote anyway. I should assure everyone of that. But how do you see this one going?
In the nicest way possible to the two Irish people in the court right now, I'd love nothing more than for Ireland to go home, simply because if they dominate this game, it takes a lot of fun out of the tournament of who's going to win.
We have been slightly boring, like 17 in a row it's a bit much, like.
Yeah, it does get boring after a while. So I would love for New Zealand to win, but I think Ireland will win by 2 points.
You're really calling the tight games. I love it. Harley, you're a URC friend of ours. Surely you're going to say Ireland, even though maybe not.
No. So I was on David O'Sullivan's community Limerick radio show, and I made the bold prediction that if it's not this World Cup, when will Ireland win one? And I have not seen anything from any team to change my mind on that. So I'm thinking Ireland by about 12.
Oh, you see that I like, because I don't want the last minute anguish of the South Africa game all over again. I can't do that for 3 weeks in a row.
A little bit more like the Scotland game, where New Zealand will make themselves look better at the end.
Nice, and we'll be singing the Fields of Athenry after 60 seconds. I like that. I like that as a start. For Sam Kane said today that no matter what they do, whether they win or lose, they won't be able to silence the Irish crowd. It's going to be absolutely huge. That, as I said, Ireland have taken over Paris. There's 15,000 people flying out of Dublin alone for this game. It feels, as Harley said, as Shane Horgan has said, if it's not now, when's it going to be? But it does feel like it could be now.
It's mad to think this is the World Cup that was meant to be in Ireland, and we've just made it an Irish World Cup, and in a way,
the Uruguayans will still be finding their way out of Thurles as we speak.
But I think for me, it's a 10+ point win for Ireland. I think we have enough to win this by double digits of some description. We are playing the better rugby at the moment, but if you give New Zealand the sniff, they will take their points. And it's all about making sure we take our chances when they come up, which we've been progressively getting better at since that South Africa game, and reducing New Zealand's ability to score. And I think we definitely have the ability to do that.
Well, you say, what you said was a 10?
10 plus, yeah.
Yeah. Ireland's last 3 victories over New Zealand were 9, 11, and 10 points.
Yeah.
So there is an element of, if Ireland do go out there and perform, you know, as we've seen with so many other games, like this France game in the Six Nations, winning by 5 points isn't really something that happens too often. The South Africa game was an exception. If I get a chance, I might do a mini podcast myself on this tomorrow, just to go into greater detail. But I just feel like I feel incredibly nervous, as you said. If you're not nervous before this game, you may never be. But it just everything from, I was in Galway City the weekend of the Tonga game, the day of the Tonga game, and there was people wearing green, and there was a buzz about the World Cup being on, and the pubs were advertising it, and there was a lot of people tuning in. And then the South Africa game came, and I'd never seen anything like that for a non-Six Nations game, for a non-England Six Nations game even, because they're usually the ones that stand out. And then the Scotland game came around, and I couldn't get over the buzz again. And now I hope she doesn't mind me asking. My sister isn't a big rugby fan. She sent me on the link of Matt Hansen and James Ryan set to be ruled out, and said, "Can we still win without these guys?" Like, that's the level that this is getting to. This is 80% of people in the country, on the island, will be watching this game. There'll be 60,000 over at it. If not now, then when are they going to do it? I don't know.
This is our time.
I sincerely hope it is our time. I hope there's no cards. I hope there's no bitching or moaning by whoever loses or even wins, because that does happen sometimes too. I hope we do it. Harley, do you want to jump in there?
I just want to put one thing in, just to make you a bit more nervy.
Oh,
So you mentioned
that's exactly what we need.
You've mentioned obviously that Ireland's on the, what is a record for them, 17-game winning streak. Obviously the last team they lost to was New Zealand.
Yeah, in Eden Park though, like everyone loses in Eden Park.
Yeah, I mean, the record for losing it for teams for New Zealand winning Eden Park, so even better. But I was going to say, it's one more win to draw with England and New Zealand for tier 1 consecutive wins. Because obviously Cyprus had that weird 28-game run. Yeah. But I think most of their games are against Malta or someone. So, but all I'm saying is, you get to 18 and then normally you lose the next game. Just putting it out there.
I might even take it if it means we don't have 4 more years of quarterfinal talk, to be honest. Because, geez, the Scots haven't done anything in 20 years and they're still talking about getting to a World Cup semi-final in the 90s.
Hey, you leave reigning 5 Nations champion Scotland out of this, okay?
Yeah, but Scarlets are the reigning Pro 12 champions, like, you know.
And it's a reigning Rainbow
Cup. Exactly.
This is going down a tangent I did not predict to have to deal with, I must say. So 4 people going for Ireland, 1 more anxious than the rest, I think is fair to say. But I think we're all going to enjoy this game, or especially the neutral. I think you're in for an absolute classic. Maybe not the case with quarterfinal number 3 in Marseille, especially if it's promised to rain out of the heavens for that one. England against Fiji. It's the finalists of 4 years ago who were under a wave of doubt. But then Fiji, known for their flying, frantic rugby, they're not exactly flying it either. Ben, as a lot of people have said, it feels like England should be winning this. But Fiji probably don't have as much pressure now after that loss, but then maybe there's more. It's hard to know what the sense is, but where do you stand ahead of this game?
I have zero confidence in this current England team. We could be playing anyone in the world, and I wouldn't guarantee a win.
Is that hyperbole, or is that like genuine zero?
Well, in this game in particular, I have zero confidence. I think out of the 2 teams, we will win, but I wouldn't put a penny on us winning, because even with the team selection we've seen, it's not the official team as we've seen so far, but the Telegraph nearly always get it spot on. And to drop Freddie Stewart after he started every single game in the last 3 years or so at 15, it makes no sense to me. To bring in someone who's never played a game at fullback until this tournament, who's a fly half, to start a fullback in a World Cup quarter final, drop George Ford. I think the dropping George Ford part stinks of a game that he wants to win in the last 10 minutes. He's going to bring on George Ford and expect him to win the game, which means he thinks it'll be close in the last 20, 15, 10 minutes, which in itself doesn't bring me much confidence. I think again, as I said before about the Ireland game, defense will win the game. We've conceded 3 tries up to this point in the tournament, the least of any team. Yeah, we've had a really easy pool compared to most teams, but I think if we can keep them to 1, 2 tries, that's going to win the game. But if we let them break away and let them rack up 3 or 4 tries, we could get thumped.
Well, it is a great point again about defense, but I suppose England didn't have to deal with the attacking quality that is Romania, like some of us did. But listen, it is one thing that we mentioned the last day. I said to Sam, like, I don't know if England's defense is in spite of Kevin Sinfield or because of Kevin Sinfield, because it looks like they make so many tactical errors or defensive lapses, but they're still not conceding tries, and you have to hand that to them. Pádraig, probably, as Ben said, with the selection that we're expecting, no Stewart, Ford on the bench, Smith at 15, marching back to 13. Like, it's now a hallmark of Borthwick's year to be incohesive with constant changes. What's your thoughts on, again, further rotation ahead of a World Cup quarterfinal?
It feels to me that Borthwick doesn't know his best team or really how he wants to play, because he clearly has ideas of what he wants to do, but he seems to not know how to implement them. I'd say if he had taken over the team a year previously, he wouldn't have Farrell in there, for example. I think this team would have a completely different look. I don't think Borthwick had the ability to get rid of the players he didn't know what to do with. So he's just trying to make do with what he has, or what is considered the best 33-ish for his game plan. I think the hallmark for England for this World Cup is luck. To be honest, they have seemed to get luck when they've needed it. If you think of the headed on try, that seemed to open up the floodgates against Japan when they couldn't seem to get going. Argentina not being able to hold on to a ball, like I said earlier, there that's something you can use when you're getting lucky. Not having cohesion suddenly gets made up for very quickly. And I don't know, I just see them keeping it tight, keeping it physical, and I would have started Ford for his kicking game to just keep Fiji pinned and keep them back and make them play from deep as much as possible.
They've been a poor attacking side so far, which isn't like them.
Yes, and I think what they've done is they've tried to add layers to their game, but instead of adding a layer, they just, instead of going, this is how we play, and when we get the chance, we'll do these things, they're kind of going, let's just play conservatively. They're not mixing it. Fiji are mixing and matching what they're doing very well. I am, and I see England just keeping the ball tight and trying to tire Fiji out physically through making them make tackles and make them run up and down the pitch. And then the last 20, it'll hopefully open up for them. This will be a 101 on how to beat the perceived notion of what a Pacific nation, how a Pacific nation team plays. Fiji have added more strings to their bow this year. I think anyone can see that, but how much they have left in their legs, and I think that's what will worry England more than anything else.
Absolutely, and we'll move on to Fiji now, Harley, because obviously they were in Wales's pool, and in Pool C, came second out of that one. But they started the pool stages so strong. They really should have beaten Wales in that first game in Bordeaux. Well, you know what I mean. Not that it was ever talked about. But then they beat Australia. It was an incredible result. But then to scrape past Georgia and lose to Portugal, like, I don't know. I don't want to say downward spiral, but it certainly feels like that wave of expectation that kicked in after they beat Australia is starting to just suffocate them a tiny bit.
I do think you've got to take some of the things into context as well. So losing Caleb Muntz, their first choice fly half is a big thing, and the game management and just how slick he is. I do think they've been a little bit. Actually, I think they've been a bit too keen trying to spread it right, and usually those issues have lost patience. And I think this is Fiji weirdly, I think this is Fiji's transition into a tier one. So when you get the lower side, so I know Ireland in the past, you wouldn't accuse them of it now. They're far too ruthless, but Wales certainly, Scotland, Italy. When it comes up to they raise their game for other tier one sides, but when it was a team they were expected to beat comfortably, they almost take it for granted, and then they'll try. So, like for the Portugal game, Fiji actually made a heap of changes and took rested a lot of their best players in anticipation for this quarter final, knowing they only needed 1 point. And Wales have gotten us used to these sort of squeaky bum tier two clashes. So where it never looks pretty, but at least we usually come out the right side. And I think that's where Fiji have failed. I think one thing I think that Fiji need to try and stay away from is try and have as few lineouts in the game as possible. It's a tactic that worked for Gatland when it was Eddie Jones' England as well, where our lineout is historically weak, so we keep the ball on field and go for fitness. Because actually, this Fiji team won't tire out as quickly as most tier two sides, because Simon Rai-Louis really embedded in their idea that this fitness, and the fitness is clarity, and with clarity you can execute better. And he basically said, if you want to have more fun rugby for the whole 80 minutes, you've got to get fitter. And that's helped. And I think he did a very nice symbolic gesture, which for great for Portugal. But with giving every single one of those match jerseys versus Portugal, he gave it to the Portuguese players and staff. And it was almost like right, that's a line, we forget about that. Right, England. So I think that's the thing. I think one good thing for Fiji is this scrum it's it's probably not a weapon, but it's a stable enough platform that England will probably try and target it, but won't get as much change as they would hope. So I think that's going to level it a bit, and they do have the ability to go through. I think one thing is going to be Simon Matt, because Joshua Tuisova, sorry, and all the off-field issues he's had. I don't want to assume that I'm sure if he didn't think he was able to play, he'd have bowed himself out, but that's got to affect you. So, if I'm England, I'd be just kicking it into touch, every possible thing, because they've got such a good defensive line now that it's almost their line out ball, particularly with how bad Fiji have been.
And probably in contrast to the team that Borthwick is expected to select, that slower game does kind of suit England, because they do have a lot of the artillery to do it. And if they can just, rely on their defense, rely on their kicking game, you'd imagine they'll have too much. You mentioned Simon Rai-Louis there. Probably should say, in terms of his off-field work, his on-field work, he only started the job this year. Like, it's easy to forget that Vern Cotter was over them last November and he departed. He has done an amazing job, and he is 80 minutes from one of the greatest results in Fiji rugby history. And listen, a lot of people will be supporting Fiji, as we know. It's natural, especially against England, but it's natural because it's Fiji anyways. It would be remarkable if they do it, but it's hard to see, I feel like. And I don't know which way to go. Ben, I might just, before we get into predictions, I might just get your thoughts on the selection calls that we're expecting just in full. It sounds like Freddie Stewart making way, George Ford making way. Not 100% well versed myself, so do you want to just take us through that first before we get into predictions?
I mean, I wish I could explain it. I thought if it was me in the head coach role, which is not, but I'd start Ford and I'd have Farrell off the bench for impact. I think Ford's been better the last 12 months when he's been fit, and I think Ford's been better this tournament. But I expected Borthwick to go with Ford and Farrell, with Smith off the bench and with Stewart. So I wish I could explain why Stewart's been dropped, but it's not happened. We've never gone into a big game without Freddie Stewart at fullback, there was rumours of him being pushed out to the wing, which just show you how important he is to this team. That you can't drop Freddie Stewart. He adds so much, and he's gelled with the players around him. So to drop him at this stage after starting him all through the groups, it there must be a reason why, but I couldn't tell you what it is. I think Marchant's a lot better at 13 than he is on the wing, but at the same time, is that going to be enough facing off against Naif Alevu? I don't know.
It's a big one. And Nike Levu, who had a disappointing game last time around, he's certainly going to be seeking to have a bounce back performance. Tuisova, you would expect a big performance with him with everything that's been going on in the background. And yeah, it is. There are questionable calls. Like even just the fact that an England team whose defense has been so good, sure, it is a big reason for that. Yes, he can be slow on the turn and things like that, but he's 9 times out of 10, he's defensively rock solid and safe as houses. So it is a big call. Pádraig, I'll start with yourself on predictions. Marseille, Sunday afternoon, England against Fiji. Name your winner.
My head says England, my heart says Fiji, and if Levani Bottia has the game of the tournament, Fiji win. I think Bottia will have Bottia has the ability to just to impact the game on a fundamental level, and if he has a good game, I can see it swinging Fiji's way. But I think no matter how England are playing, the Fiji game pre-World Cup aside, they have the ability to just win games like they're expected to win, if that makes sense. And I'd give them the slight edge like I did. I go 60-40 England Fiji, if that makes sense, in my confidence and on how it's going to go. But yeah, I would slightly favor England, but it's head and heart. My heart says Fiji can do it. My head says England have just enough. But if the changes happen, that squad and that backline has so many changes that it makes no visible sense to what we know, then who knows? Because that could really destabilize what you're doing.
Absolutely. Harley, we've one on the board for England so far. Are you going to make it too?
I predicted an England win by about 11 on my own pod. As much as it pains me to ever go for England, but I can see it just being one of those typical things. They're just going to kick Fiji to death, and it's not going to be pretty, but it will be effective, and everyone will be booing them same way as everyone was booing Wales when they played Fiji and did a fairly similar game plan of just keep them pinned in their own 22, and and then there was we scored off line out mauls, funky inside balls when the defense got a bit excited. I'd love to say Fiji by 12, but unfortunately, the head wins out in these sorts of things for me.
Listen, if Pádraig or I actually can't remember who said it. Apologies. It comes right and Bottia has a huge performance. You never know. Maybe that kind of turnover ball and playing off scraps, maybe they can do something. But I'm in the same boat as yourself. I actually don't mind this English team. I think at the core of it all, there's a lot of lads that you would root for if they weren't in an England shirt. But then I'm saying that it's Owen Farrell, and Owen Farrell's pantomime villain number 2 in the world behind Johnny Sexton. So maybe that's just me. I think England will win this as well. I think they'll win it by honestly about 10 points, because I feel like they will just frustrate Fiji and they'll push on in the last couple of minutes. Ben, we've been pretty much all agreeing with each other so far. I know you've no faith to put your money where your mouth is, but would you still call England to win this one?
I think it'll be very similar to the Samoa game. I think it'll be a boring, slow game if we get our way. I think they'll come out the blocks and there'll be a try up at half time. And then the 40 to 60-minute interval will be crucial. And I think we'll win it late on, and we'll win by 5 points.
I think that's all fair. And our last game of the night, it could be a potential classic. It could be the best of the lot. France, the tournament hosts, South Africa, the defending champions in Paris. It'll be vibrant. It'll be partisan. It'll be exciting. Like, listen, Harley, it doesn't get much better than this for a World Cup quarterfinal. You've been there, you've seen the amazing atmosphere in France. It's hard not to imagine that cauldron that Stade de France can be won't be a huge factor for France on Sunday night.
I mean, it's got to be. I mean, I just want to. I'm going to talk about my trip in reverse. So coming into Bristol Airport, and on the wall in front of you as you get through customs, please leave immediately. Which, I'll be honest, is the UK following policy at the moment. But we won't go too political. But when I got into Lyon Airport, you had Dupont, you had Untermack. I know he's not in. You had Olivon, you had Dante. And then as you got out of the airport, you saw them all again and again, and they are plastered everywhere. They are, they are being treated like footballers are in the UK terms. And just the French chanting. So when we were on our packed tram going into the stadium, you were, Welsh fans were singing up songs, and then the French were doing it, and just ripping. My French is terrible, but I got what they were saying. I won't repeat it on this podcast, but it was not flashing. Let's put it that way. But and they are up for this. Now that could be a benefit to France, but we've also seen it in the past. It could be a problem, and if South Africa can turn the French crowd, then that pressure is going to pile on. And I genuinely have no idea which way this game's going to go. I mean, Dupont being back and fit is going to be a huge bonus. But then, rumours about Pollard and Am coming back for South Africa are equally huge.
They are, and like South Africa could go 5-3, 6-2, 7-1. Like that's going to take up headlines tomorrow morning when the team is announced. Like France looks like they'll have Dupont back on the flip side of things. Wait, did I say France or South Africa? You got the joke. Anyways, regardless of which nation I said. But there's so many different angles you could look at this game at. But, and I'll put this one to yourself, Ben, like France have looked close to unbeatable for about 2-3 years now. They'll get Dupont back. Jalibert's found his groove. Not Dupont. Penaud has been what Damien Penaud can be. It just feels like they're finding that extra gear at the right time.
Yeah, 100%. I think I've had France as my favourites to win for about a year, and it hasn't really changed for a single minute of that year. But I think they're being eased into it in a nice way. I think stylistically, New Zealand is the easiest game of the three top four, and then it's South Africa, and then Ireland's their hardest game stylistically. So if they get through this challenge and face Ireland in the final, it'd be quite poetic if they can overcome all three or not. But I I don't see France having many problems with South Africa. As much as South Africa are one of the three best teams in the world, I think I think France will have too much in the forward pack and in the backs as well.
Okay. Pádraig, we'll move on to South Africa before we wrap things up. Like, yeah, they lost to Ireland, but that doesn't make you a bad team, not by any stretch of the imagination. But
Sorry, go
on. No, I'm just gonna say, like, it feels like they probably have the tools to beat France in terms of their power, their set piece, maybe slowing the game down just enough that it becomes more of a physical battle.
Yeah, I think South Africa will have to play to their strengths. Like they'll have to maul and play that set piece type of game. But then again, France like that as well. This is really weird. Their styles kind of will clash, and this will be pure brutal physicality. I think the big call for South Africa, it's Pollard versus Libok, and that's the big call in that game. I think if Pollard starts, that gives them flexibility in their bench and what they're trying to do and how they can impact the game, because Libok can come on and literally change what the game is, whereas France have their game plan, they stick to it, and Dupont comes off, their game changes, but what they're trying to do stays the same, whereas South Africa have the ability to change it up with what they bring off the bench. can it be an 80-minute game for them? Like, they have to silence the French crowd very quickly. Like, New Zealand got that early try, first match of the tournament, and the crowd in Paris went dead.
Yeah.
And if South Africa can get that try and then keep the ball in the French 22 and play territory, suddenly that inspiration that the French crowd can be will turn, and I think that's where the mind games, the strategies, and those type of things that will benefit South Africa, but they have to start fast, and that's where the game could be won and lost in the first 10 minutes.
Really could be. It promises to be a cracker. I have said since the start of the tournament, I think South Africa will win this, but France have just kind of ticked the boxes even better than I expected. I thought they were really impressive in how they managed that New Zealand game in terms of, yeah, they look nervous, they look flustered at times, but they still got a bonus point win in the end. Like that's what the very best teams do, not just quarterfinal teams. And then they dispatched of Italy with ease. Yeah, they were poor against Uruguay, but France's second team have consistently been kind of hit and miss. They were cruel to Namibia, to put it that way, to put it mildly. And I can't call it, to be honest. I feel like this will go down to the absolute wire. And Harley, I'll come to you first for predictions. Like, how do you think it's going to go? Who do you think is going to win it? Are we going to have a win? Is it going to be a draw potentially?
Well, and if it goes to draw, then there's plenty of people who can kick for goal for France. But
as for
I
South
just want to bring
Africa,
up there two. South Africa, plenty of people who take place kicks, not so many who you'd back to slot them. But there are two big French losses for me that I think make this a lot more nervy. One of them is Romain Ntamack, and that's no criticism of Mathieu Jalibert. But there's something about the cool and calmness of Ntamack. Like, everyone remembers that one, getting the ball on his own in his own dead ball area and somehow managing to make 50 meters. And just knowing when to kick, I think, is something that Jalibert is all right at, but he's not. He is that step down. Is that was it Ross Byrne from Johnny Sexton will do the job and fit the system, but it's that 2 or 3% that needs. And I think the big one, particularly against the box, and I think this is one of the few teams who I think France, this is Paul Willemse, just because he's a bastard, and if there's anything you need against the South Africans, it's a bastard.
Yeah. There's no better way of putting that. Like, you just need a dogged ass of a second row, don't you? Sometimes, like,
or either in the War God's case, back row, but
that's kind of what I was thinking as well. Which way do you see it going then, Harry? Like,
I keep flip flopping on it, and I think even once I've seen I think even after the game, I'm still not going to be sure. I'm leaning
I
towards
feel like
France
you can be
by
fairly confident afterwards now, to be honest.
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be one of those where you're still not entirely sure what happened. But yeah, I'm going to lean on France by 2. I think it's going to be very tight. It's going to be very physical.
Okay, Ben, I'll come to you next. Who's taking the spoils in this massive quarterfinal?
I think if France are patient and they don't lose their heads and they don't try to force anything, they'll win by 5.
Another tight matchup, and I really hope we get the quarterfinals that you're expecting. I honestly do. Pádraig, to round things out, we've been unanimous in every game so far. Are you going to keep it the same?
Yeah, I think it's going to be France by a kick of a ball. Either that's going to be a penalty or in penalties after extra time, which I think would be great for everyone's heart rate. No,
no. I was in the Aviva from Munster to lose. That was the worst experience of my life, those 10 minutes.
I think the lack of proper hooker on South Africa's bench will have more impact than you'd expect. The second that change happens, watch France throw up at the pot at 1 every single time, and go after the scrum every chance they can. But it's going to be a kick of a ball. I would favor France. If it's not done within the 80 minutes, it will go to penalties and France will win when it comes to place kicks like that.
I'd actually love to see that. Apart from the fact it'd be like 11 o'clock local time or 11 o'clock Irish time here. No more than the people in France. Like, we're all have to get up early in the morning, but it would be fantastic if we do get it. Listen, our predictions have been fairly good so far. Granted, we've only done predictions of Ireland games, so don't blame us if we end up getting Argentina against New Zealand and Fiji against South Africa in a week's time.
I was going to say we're not Paul Williams, but he's been 100% accurate all tournament.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
scary, isn't it? He's been better than the data guys.
Yeah, the end is coming. I'm convinced, because he said about him having a cup of tea, not like a full teapot of tea. I'm convinced he's been replaced by someone. I think the Russians finally got to him.
God, this podcast has just gone from zero to political really quickly over the last couple of paragraphs.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just point one thing out with our predictions as well?
Go on.
We've predicted the first World Cup semi-finals with not a single Southern Hemisphere team in it.
Yes, I noticed that. All right, I was going to bring that up. That would be remarkable.
Yeah,
It
I think a lot of it's down to Australia and Argentina to a degree. They're all trying to play like New Zealand, and that's something that Northern Hemisphere teams are starting to. If you can't do it well, it's gonna bite you in the end. And I think they're going to find that out. Australia found it out. Argentina might find it out this weekend as well.
Yeah, we'll wait and see. Listen, there's going to be 2 Irish guests, I believe, on Monday, and can't remember who else, but hopefully it is an Irish win that we're celebrating when we come back. The Monday night recap pod will, of course, be back as always to look back on the 4 quarterfinals. Depending on how it goes, it might only be 3. It might only be 1. We don't know which way we're gonna go. It's very result dependent. I don't have an editor to talk to me and decide things. As always, gentlemen, to Ben, to Harley, to Pádraig, thank you so much for joining me. It's been a pleasure. It's always great to get the outside perspectives on these games, and even, a different perspective as well on maybe an English game with yourself, Pádraig, or whatever. And thanks so much to everyone for listening, for making this World Cup what it has been. A lot of fun to cover so far. As always, if you do like what you see or hear, please do subscribe, and I'll link the lads' Twitter pages and various things down below. But for now, take it easy. And remember, in the words of Donncha O'Callaghan, we've already taken over Paris. Good night. Go easy.